Thanks so much for watching On the Trail of the Nephilim. There is a hidden history that has been deliberately obfuscated from the peoples of the world. And that's why we are on the trail. A little bit of house cleaning here. I will be on Coast to Coast for 3 hours on the 18th. That's next week. Talking about all things Nephilim, UFO, basically from the 13 books that I penned. I'm bragging here. 21 films I've either directed or co-produced with my good friend, the late Richard Shaw. So I will be on Coast to Coast. Looking forward to that. Always a romp with George. I've been on that show now, I think, close to 20 years. So it's pretty amazing. But let's move right along. We're talking about the mummy skull. And, of course, I've been showing this all week. This is a one-to-one model of it done by Joe Taylor at the Mount Blanco Museum. A few months ago, Joe had a devastating tornado, ripped the roof off the building, a lot of rain damage, and we raised money for that. But Joe's a good friend, and this is his handiwork. Here's another one like this, and we're going to kind of wrap some of this up today. We'll see where it goes, but you can see on the screen, there's the shot, the full, basically the front of what was, or what is, the baby mummy skull right after it was wrapped, or unwrapped, I should say, at Senior Juan's Paracas History Museum in Paracas, Peru. At 1,935 years old, we got to do that. Notice how large the orbits are. They're definitely 25 to 30% larger than a normal human being. So it gives you an idea of what we're looking at. We believe it's genetic, and I'm going to talk about that. There's two schools of thought here. One is that everything that we see is a result of cranial deformation, cradle headboarding. This is when you take the skull of an infant and you wrap it with cloth, okay? And you put pressure on it. We're not disputing that. We know that is practice. But the question is, why are certain peoples globally doing this? Why is having a cone head or an elongated skull a good thing? And why do people bind the heads of their children? So moving right along, and before we get into all this, a word from our sponsor, Noble Gold. Are you happily putting your life savings on the stock market right now, despite the dangers? If you've been thinking about investing safer so you can retire comfortably and sleep at night, you could do worse than talk to a Noble Gold expert about the tax advantages and other pluses of precious metal IRAs. Of course, you might just love uncertainty, but if you don't, you can get a free America the Beautiful solid silver 5-ounce coin with any qualified plan you start. Call 877-646-5347 or visit noblegoldinvestments.com. That's noblegoldinvestments.com. Folks, Noble Gold has been our sponsors for quite some time now, and we thank them for that. But, precious metals, if everything goes south, fiat currency is exactly what it is. It might not even be worth the paper it's printed on. So check it out. Do your own research. NobleGoldInvestments.com. That's NobleGoldInvestments.com. Once again, the number 877-646-5347. If you decide to get gold or silver, the bullion will come right to your door, and you actually have precious metal in your hands. If you come here looking for politics, prophecy, and the supernatural report, the full Monty, we are doing that, but it's over on Rumble and Roku because we don't want to get in trouble with YouTube. So we're very careful what we say, which is why we're doing actually 3 different shows. One is On the Trail of the Nephilim. The other one is a daily UFO report. And then over on Roku and in Rumble is our politics, prophecy, and the supernatural report, the full Monty, moving right along. So here's a shot of Joe Taylor. And you can see how methodical it was. Chase Klotsky was our forensic field person, and she was flagging and tagging basically everything. And so we were able to take cloth from the mummy wrappings. And this is why when I say 1,935 years old, we had it carbon-14 dated. So on one hand, it's incredible to realize that we're back almost in the time of Jesus, really 2,000 years ago, that this entity, notice I don't call it a person, this entity was buried at the Chongos necropolis. And I've talked about Chongos before, just briefly. Chongos, the first time I was there, Brian Forrester let us in. And we went in the entrance near the pyramid. And the pyramid is in great disarray, and it's all adobe and it's crumbled. So we all kind of straggled in, and you basically go into this garbage dump. This is how we access it. There are other ways, but this is how Brian led us. So you go through a very, very poor section of near Paracas, where there's hovels. That's the best way to describe it. Very, very poor. They're hovels. Bamboo siding, dirt floors, that type of thing. Laundry hanging out, kids, dogs running around, people herding sheep and goats. There are no streets. Everything's a dirt road. So if it does rain, and it hardly ever rains, if I get less than a quarter inch, the whole place turns into a sea of mud. It's impassable. So the bottom line is, we were in a van, and we pull the van up in this one area. We hop out, and I remember Richard, there was this goat herder, and this kid had probably, I don't know, 50 or 60 sheep, and Rick jumped out and immediately filmed a great B-roll. So this is what this is the kinds of things that you see when you're nearing Chongos. So we could see it in the distance, but we had to cross this lush, green, fertile area. What happens is there's an underground river that flows from the Andes, and it goes right by Chongos. So everything is green and lush, and then 5 feet away is desert. In other words, where there's no more water. One of the driest places on Earth. And this mummy skull that you see here was unearthed in the Chongos necropolis. So we went back in 2014, and Senior One allowed us to unwrap it. Here's a shot showing the unwrapping of the mummy. We get our first real good view of it from the side. Here's another one, and we notice instantly the strawberry blonde hair that this entity had. It's out in the sunlight, being held in Senior One's palm of his hand. And once again, notice the strawberry blonde hair. Look, native Peruvians don't have strawberry blonde hair. So right off the bat, something's wrong with this picture. So, by way of review, the Paracas people show up about 3,500 years ago. This fits the timeline of the conquest of the Levant. In other words, we believe that there was a diaspora of Nephilim tribes. We believe that they fled the Levant when Joshua and Caleb came in. So you say, well, what are the Nephilim? Well, first of all, the Nephilim are the unholy progeny between fallen angels and the women of earth. Genesis 6, Genesis 3. Unless we come to an understanding, a full understanding of Genesis 3:15, and it's really not taught in the churches. I mean, they don't really get into this. And I've talked about this before, but I need to say it again because new people come here every day. Listen to this. Genesis 3:15, look it up for yourself. There's a little vignette. Adam and Eve are over here, the dragon's over here, pre-incarnate Christ. And the pre-incarnate Christ, Jesus, basically looks at the dragon and says, your seed, your offspring, will be at war, at enmity, with the offspring, the seed of the woman. He, the one coming from the woman's seed, will crush your head. In other words, destroy the dragon's kingdom. You will bruise his heel. That sets up the rest of the biblical prophetic narrative. 3 chapters later, in Genesis 6, guess what happens? The unthinkable. The sons of God saw the daughters of men that they were beautiful, that they were fair, comely. And they took wives, plural, and they had sex with the women. And they created an offspring, an unholy hybrid, known as the Nephilim. Why would they do this, LA? They did this to pollute the genome. And they almost succeed in doing it, except for the 8 people that get on the ark. And in my book, Countermove, How the Nephilim Returned After the Flood, I deal with the idea that Ham's wife is not carrying a Nephilim gene. That's not happening, in my opinion. Others believe it. The late Rob Skeeber promulgated that theory. I've never held on to it. I don't believe it. I believe, and I'll of course sort of spill the beans on the book, it was a suicide mission. They knew exactly what was going to happen. They knew the penalty of this great sin, and they did it anyway, because they only had one shot. They know that when Jesus says to the dragon, someone will come and crush your head, the dragon doesn't want that. The dragon wants to hold on to his kingdom. What is his kingdom? Planet Earth. I'm not making this stuff up. Check. Who is the prince of the power of the air? Who is the ruler of this planet? Who do you think? Why do we think all the crazy stuff that we see happening? Some of it is being fueled, in my opinion, satanically. So there was a diaspora 3,500 years ago. They moved westward to Sardinia, to Gozo, to Malta, all those places. And then up into Spain, Portugal, France, Britain, and finally over here. We know from our work in America's Stonehenge that the Baal stone, and I've talked about this before, to Baal in dedication. To Baal of the Canaanites in dedication. What's a 4,000-year-old stone a dedication stone written in Iberian Punic, doing in New Hampshire at America's Stonehenge. Look, folks, there is a hidden history that has been deliberately obfuscated from the peoples of the world. Why? Because it points back to the validity of the biblical prophetic narrative. I'm not making this stuff up. We've got artifacts. This is an artifact right here, almost 2,000 years old. And guess what? The DNA from the baby mummy showed a Middle Eastern origin. Oh, it's contaminated. That's immediately what the skeptics say, because that's what they have to throw. We had full lab suits, Mondo and I, head to toe lab suits, head to toe. Chase was in one, Richard was in another one. They didn't change after each one, we did, because they were back. Richard was sort of out of the room. Chase was just handing stuff, artifacts we were handling back. She was flagging. Let me do it again. 3, 2, 1. Chase was flagging and tagging some of the samples that we were taking. But Mondo and I, every new skull that we examined, we would go out of the room, get stripped down from our lab suits, put on new ones, blow each other off with compressed air, had a lab hat, goggles, face masks, double sleeves, gloves, the whole 9 yards, boots, and then we would go in. It looked like something out of CSI. I mean, it really did. So they always say that it was contaminated. Well, if it was contaminated, as Mondo states in episode 6, DNA, the final results, then why didn't we get nuclear DNA? We didn't get any nuclear DNA from any of the samples. It's very difficult to actually tease that out of a 2,000-year-old sample. So if the samples are contaminated, we should have gotten nuclear DNA, and that would have been from Mondo or myself, but we didn't. We tested this samples from the baby, 3 different labs. They all came back with the same haplogroup. A haplogroup shows the mitochondrial, the maternal line of where it comes from. And there's all these different groups. Let's say B usually comes from Asia, and that's where Amerindians mostly come from. We don't dispute that. So what is this U2E1, which is Eastern Europe? What is this U2E1 haplogroup doing in Peru? This substantiates our theory that there was a diaspora of Nephilim tribes that fled the Levant. The Paracas people had intricate textiles, some of which were not duplicated with the same level of sophistication until modernity. Absolutely. When you look at some of the textiles, they are so elaborate. In fact, some of the robes from the Paracas people go, and this is why the Ricaros are in business. Now, they don't sell them for $1 million, but they can probably get, maybe $10,000, $20,000 for each of these robes that they find. These robes were fit for royalty, and the textile and the weave is absolutely incredible. They get them, they get maybe 10 grand, and then they move up in the black market, and they sell for about $1 million. Brian Forrester, in one of our adventures out in the Changos Necropolis, found the remains of what appeared to be a bowl. And, when the Ricaros come in, they don't care. They're just looking for gold, silver, artifacts like that. They're trying to make money. That's what they do. The grave robbers. So this bowl was smashed in, maybe 10 different pieces. But Brian noticed that, and his wife, Irene, helped him get all the pieces. She discovered several of them that were a few feet away that Brian had missed. So Brian painstakingly puts this bowl together. Here's the rub. That bowl, we believe, was turned on a wheel. The Peruvian people, pre-Columbian, did not have use of a potter's wheel. They would roll the clay and create pottery. And this is why when you look at Inca pottery, it's very thick. It's like this. When you look at Paracas pottery, it's very, very thin. And when Brian glued that bowl together, perfectly round, we could spin it, and you could see how it was formed. We believe that these elongated skulls migrated from the Middle East. They were, in fact, now this is my theory, my wheelhouse. I believe that they're Nephilim. This is genetic. It's not cranial deformation, and we'll get into that in just a second. Many of the elongated skulls show an absence of a sagittal suture, resulting only in one parietal plate. This is a classic example of this. I'll hold it up to the camera so you can see it. This is a suture in the front, right here, and you can see that. I'll turn it slowly. All right? It should have a suture going from this point all the way back. There it is. And, of course, it doesn't. It has no sagittal suture splitting the parietal plate. Now, there is a disease called craniosynostosis, which closes that sagittal suture, but there's not a vestige in many of the skulls that we see. And in fact, the percentage of the population that in Paracas that doesn't have a sagittal suture far exceeds what would be normal. So something else is going on, which is why we believe it's genetic. Now, I've said all that to get to this, and I promised you yesterday I would get there. Here's another shot of the baby skull moments after it was unwrapped. Thank you, Marcia Moore. Her artist rendition, she's a forensic artist of what this entity may have looked like. So here we have the Bitchute skull, the Bitchute mummy. It's a lithograph, it's a drawing. Let me read the description and then we'll get into it. More still, the same formation of the head presents itself in children yet unborn. In other words, the elongation of the skull is presenting itself in children yet unborn. Now, how do they know that? Watch. And of this truth, we have had convincing proof in the sight of a fetus enclosed in the womb of a mummy of a pregnant woman, which we found in a cave 2 leagues from Tarma, which is at this moment in our collection. We present the reader with a drawing of this conclusive and interesting proof in opposition to the advocates of mechanical action as the sole and exclusive cause of the form of the Peruvian race. Now, let's go back and look at the Bitchute mummy. So, they found the mummy, and by the way, Bitchute is one of the guys who, one of the early archaeologists who went down there and looked at this. So they open up the mummy casing and they find a woman who's pregnant, and they go, I wonder what the fetus looks like. So they go in, and I get it. This is pretty heavy stuff. And they find the baby in the womb, and it's got teeth. Can you see the teeth right there on the right-hand side? And look at the size of the orbits once again, and look at the elongation, and look at the long necks. Are you aware that one of the Nephilim tribes is called the Anakim? Yeah, like Anakim Skywalker, go figure, right? Anakim means long necks. And we've had medical doctors look at these artifacts, these skulls, and basically state, because of the position of the foramen magnum, that hole in the back of the skull where the brains, where the spinal column attaches right there, it's all the way in the back. It should be, let me see if I can do this right, it should be in here. It should be dead center of the skull to balance it, but it's not. It's all the way in the back. So we theorize that these entities must have had longer necks. There you go. Not making this stuff up. All of the medical doctors, archaeologists, anthropologists, surgeons, people who are medical professionals, trained archaeologists, trained anthropologists, come on the record in episode 6 of On the Trail of a Nephilim and state that what we are looking at is something that is genetic. Folks, the Bitchute mummy proves it. Because you can't elongate a skull in the mother's womb. You can't wrap it. It's impossible. Also, why does this child, this entity, have teeth? Every mother on the planet knows that a baby is born without teeth. And yet the Bitchute mummy clearly shows this infant, this fetus. Let me read it again. The same formation of the head presents itself in children yet unborn. In other words, the elongation of the head presents itself in children yet unborn. And of this truth, we have had convincing proof in the sight of a baby, a fetus, enclosed in the womb of a mummy of a pregnant woman. So there's another shot of what it looks like. Please note that the orbits are incredibly larger, 25 to 30% larger than a normal human being. You can elongate a skull, and I get that. You can wrap it with pressure and everything else, but you can't enlarge the orbits. That's not going to happen. You can't change the position of the foramen magnum. You can't do it. Folks, I'll say it again before I close out this segment. There is a hidden history that has been deliberately obfuscated from the peoples of the world. The Bitchute mummy exists somewhere. It does. It's probably in some museum in some back room. The powers that be know where that thing is. And I've had inroads, but everything is shut down, just like the Smithsonian. Why can't we go into the Smithsonian? What about the Freedom of Information Act? If you're a lawyer out there and you're watching this, help me. Help me. we want to file a Freedom of Information Act with the Smithsonian to be able to go in and look, and really look. I mean, they know where stuff is. Maybe they've thrown it all out. Who knows? But just like in Lima, where is the Bitchute mummy? It's probably well over 150 years ago that this thing was found. But maybe it's lying somewhere in some dusty corner. Just like, and I'm going to go down a rabbit trail here. When we were in Fatima, we talked to Jose Machado, who examined the original glass plates taken from 1917. He found problems with them. There is an object in the glass plate. It's a disc. It's hovering right over the apparition site. We broke that story. That's real hard investigation. Nobody cares. It's just amazing. So it blows the whole Fatima legend right out of the water. And we've got eyewitnesses that looked up and saw a dull silver disc. Now we've got photographic proof. But my point is this. When he went in, when Jose Machado went in to look at the glass plates, no one knew where they were. It took them a couple of hours to find the original glass plates. Why is that? Because over 100 years have passed since Fatima. And they were in a box in some closet someplace because someone moved them there and didn't tell the others after they left. And this is how things get lost over the centuries. And I'll close out by saying this. At the end of the first movie, Raiders of the Lost Ark, the Ark is in a crate, and you see them move the crate down a hallway with hundreds of other crates. And this bozo makes a left turn, and it vanishes and gone from sight. And so many things, artifacts, like the Bitchute mummy, okay? Like the glass plates at Fatima. Why can't we see them? Why is everything hidden away? If you're interested, you can get this book, On the Trail of a Nephilim. Let me hold it up here. 600 pages, full color illustrations. It's an oversized book. It weighs about almost 20 pounds, I think, whatever it is. You can avail yourself of all 7 of On the Trail of a Nephilim by going to streaming.lamarzulli.net, streaming.lamarzulli.net, and you can check it out for yourself. Or you can go to lamarzulli.net, buy the hard copies, and also procure On the Trail of the Nephilim. Moving right along with our UFO segment, which we do pretty much every day. Classic UFO disc. They are real, burgeoning, not going away. This is the coming Great Deception and the Luciferian endgame. With Pentagon UFO Unit Spotlight Report mentions off-world vehicles not made on this earth. That's right, from Fox News. What are you going to do with that, folks? Cat's out of the bag. As in the days of Noah, so will be at the coming of the Son of Man. What differentiates the days of Noah? I say this scripture almost every day. Is the presence of the B'nai Elohim. The presence of the fallen angels. And they're doing the unthinkable. They are creating hybrids. People are taken. They are abducted. Sperm is taken from the men, ovum from the women. Why do they do this over and over again? If they're so advanced from Zeta Reticuli, why do they have to abduct people with the cover of darkness? Right? Why do they abduct 5-year-old boys against their parents' permission? Or young girls? And mess with them and tamper with them. And they do this. They are obsessed with our reproduction. I'll give you another example. Why is it that this is happening decade after decade after decade in the cover of darkness? People are taken. Why? The same bizarre medical experimentation goes on. Surely they know what's going on. If they're so brilliant and can come here from some other galaxy, then what are they doing? They are creating a hybrid race. Let me go back here. As in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. So there you go. They are creating hybrids, just like the days of Noah. In our film, we talk about this. Al Matthews had an encounter with what he can only describe as a hybrid entity. If you haven't seen the film, it's free. Watch it. So here, this came in. Check this out. Man's going to remain anonymous. I think you'll find this report very interesting. If you've got pictures, videos, or report, please send them my way. la@lamarzulli.net. la@lamarzulli.net. This is a clearinghouse. I believe you. I know some of you have had experiences you've never told anyone. I can keep you anonymous. Please reach out. because I'm reaching out to you. Listen to this. I live 11 miles south of Daytona Beach and 11 miles west of New Smyrna Beach in the small community of Samsula, Florida, population 500. Salute here. UFO sightings are common. I regularly see bright orbs flying over my farm at 200 feet, silent, and making maneuvers that our aircraft cannot perform. Right angle turns. At Dealing Fish Camp, I saw some sort of craft, disc in a shape, hovering 30 feet above the trees. This craft was at least a mile wide. 75 feet tall, and its appearance was like brushed aluminum. Seamless. No windows that I could see. However, I could see 3 large black domes protruding out of the bottom. It looked very much like the craft Jupiter 2 in the remake of Lost in Space. I was 50 yards away and watched the silent craft for about 10 minutes. Then it disappeared. It vanished, like turning off a switch. If you blinked, you missed it. This happened at 1 p.m. right after lunch on a sunny, cloudless day in September of 2011. Being a retired physician assistant, I thought I was hallucinating for a few minutes. When I finally realized what I was seeing was real, I couldn't wrap my head around it. To this day, it perplexes me thinking about it. I just keep it to myself out of fear of people judging me. There we go. I am a pilot, and I would like to keep my license. I'm 70 years old. To be truthful, this craft was not a mile wide. It was more like 5 miles wide. I say a mile wide because people won't believe 1 mile. How are they ever going to believe a 5 mile wide craft? Folks, that's a mothership. They're here. And when they appear, everything changes, which is why we created the film, UFO Disclosure, The Coming Great Deception of the Luciferian Endgame. He saw a 5 mile wide craft. He's not making it up. He's a pilot. Therefore, he's a trained observer. He knows what he saw, but he won't talk about it for fear of ridicule. But people come here and they tell me all sorts of stuff. Why? Because they know there's no ridicule here, because I do believe them. Watch the film. It's free. Educate yourself. Educate yourself. We also have a book of the same title. You can get the hard copy video and the book. I think we've got specials on sale. This is important information. This is the game changer. And you need to wake up and understand. If you've not seen the movie, I'm talking to you. If you've seen the movie, I'm not talking to you. But you need to watch the film. Heck, it's free right here on YouTube. Why is it free? Because this information is way too important. That's why we released it. We are working on part 2. The way things are going, more than likely, well after the first of the year, and I apologize for that. I was trying to get it out in the fall, but we've been working daily on the rebuild, and thus, we're close, by the way. Maybe moving before Thanksgiving with occupancy, but we'll see. Thanks so much for watching On the Trail of a Nephilim and our daily UFO report. Remember, if you've got a story, please send it to me about UFO. If there's a mound on your property and you live in Ohio and it's never been excavated, I'm your guy. We have a whole team of people in a war chest. We can bring the team in, archaeologists, forensic anthropologists, Native Americans who will oversee things. There's a whole team of people. We have labs. We have DNA labs. We're ready to go. If you've got a mound on your property, shoot me an email, la@lamarzulli.net. Thanks so much for watching. Remember, we'll see you on the air or in the air.